I would encourage you to investigate what is about to come out of my mouth that you probably won't believe. Because nobody's stopped them, and because it's a huge mega billion dollar industry. Pulling
Mm,
mega billion dollar industry out by the roots literally takes like an act of Congress
yeah.
or just mass awareness that takes 20 years. The only theory I had was because I've been steering clear of farm, I was like, I think it's all the solvents in the supplements. I have been a supplement junkie. Taking higher ranges of what is measured in 25D lab tests and comparing it to good health outcomes. And the vast majority of people, including doctors, just accept that at face value. They don't ask, but are these people all taking the pills? And I can't find any evidence that by taking the pills, you achieve the health benefits. Can't find any telling anybody to do something different than what their doctor says. I'm here to help people develop some critical thinking skills
Yeah.
and a willingness to ask questions of the functional medicine world like we do the pharmaceutical world because they're way more married than people think.
Hi, everyone. Just a quick note before we begin this conversation. I just want to be very clear about my intention here. It's never to suggest all supplements are a waste of your money or potentially dangerous. We make whole food supplements that have transformed my life and the life of thousands, if not millions, of people who are using them. I just want you to know that not all supplements are created equally. Some are made by marketers, some are made by very large corporations who are using cheaper inputs and cutting corners. And it's only my intention to educate you about how to discern between those two camps, the high quality versions and the versions that might actually do more harm than good. So I sincerely hope you enjoy this episode and feel empowered rather than fearful afterwards. Enjoy. Thanks for watching. Hi, everyone. Exciting show today with Robyn Openshaw. She is the author of 16 books, including bestsellers, The Green Smoothie Diet Girl. She's a former psychotherapist. She was also a university professor, a mother of four. And today we're pulling back the curtain on the supplement industry. I know a lot of you, 50 to 70% of Americans are taking supplements today. I have my own beliefs around them. Robyn has done a deep dive, and I think what she's learned is really going to shock you. So I'm glad you're here. And Robyn, take us back to the moment that you realized that you had to write this book.
Well, actually, the moment that I was like, I'm going to write a book about this and do a deeper dive, I had spent like whole weekends obsessing about, for instance, vitamin D and going deep in there, especially when AI came out and I could basically do a meta study myself and cast a wide net and say, I want you to go gather all the studies and tell me what does it tell us about these little white pills that I've never trusted. You and I were talking about how we both kind of never trusted that I could take this pill and that it would give me this very complex steroidal complex that your body makes in exposure to the sun, or at least that is the theory. That is what science intuited like 100 years ago. But it kind of started with my mother was a Shaklee distributor.
Hmm.
And every time Shaklee came out with new pills, and this is in the 1980s, my mom would add to the cup full of vitamins I had to take before I ran for the bus. Well, one time I got really late and stuck them in my pocket, and I put them in my first period desk. And in sixth period, some cops walked in and said, "Is there a Robyn Openshaw here?" Took me to the office, and I remember they showed me that cup of pills that I had put in my desk, thinking that I'd take them later or whatever. But my mom had us taking like 40 pills a day. And we didn't even, we were like, I'm the oldest of eight children. Like, we didn't even have any money. She was a homemaker. My dad was in the military. Like, so it was kind of like the ridiculousness of adding more and more and more and more pills when we already ate a whole food diet. Everything was like we grew it ourselves, we made it ourselves, and my mom just bought every sales pitch. Well, then the moment that I was like, I'm going to write a book on this, even though I would research it here and there, and I would become aware of like how the mineral supplements were ground up rocks and chalk, sometimes shells. And I know that my body doesn't metabolize those things. I sort of was growing in awareness about it, but it was with the advent of much better research tools and going to Switzerland, where I take people every July, 15 years now, to do a liver detox retreat. And they had, since COVID, invested in some blood filtration technology. And it was spending 3 or 4 hours. It's not cheap. Having your blood filtered of glyphosate and heavy metals and all kinds of pesticides and solvents that I saw that the bag of junk that came out of my body, even though I spend the money to and take the effort to grow my own food, to buy organic, um, seeing that the bag of junk that came out of me was about like everybody else's, the only theory I had was because I've been steering clear of farm, I was like, I think it's all the solvents in the supplements. I have been a supplement junkie, not because they worked for me, but
Mm.
because as Green Smoothie Girl for 20 years now, like every supplement company gives me their supplements. I go to an event, they give them to me, they ship them to me, they beg me to promote them. I mostly say no, but I've taken 100 times more supplements than everyone else. Thinking that at worst is making expensive urine. I wish that were the case. I wish it weren't
Mm.
putting actually a really heavy burden on our kidneys and liver. So
Mm.
been supplement free for several years now and feel better, not worse.
That is so interesting. And I've always been someone who kind of just intuitively knows food is very different than any pill in a bottle. And that's why even at Paleo Valley, we never make supplements that are isolated. They're always just whole food concentrates. And I have always, yeah, just kind of understood that. But I think this is a new concept for people. And in my research for my dissertation, I found beef. Even just beef has 30,000 compounds. So we're thinking about how does one compound recreate the effects in the body of something that is so unbelievably complex that we don't even fully understand. We can't even name those 30,000
Right.
compounds, yet alone recreate them in a lab. So I'm excited to get into vitamin D, especially. That part really surprised me. But first, can you tell us who's making most of these multivitamins? What was the
Um,
relationship that you discovered there?
yeah, and I do want to come back to what you just said because that is a super important principle that one of the things that I was asking as I went deep in my research is how can they call cholecalciferol vitamin D, this incredibly complex compound of molecules? It may be as many as 80 or more molecules, and they have two molecules in cholecalciferol. How can they even legally call
Mm.
that vitamin D? I mean, not only is it not a vitamin, but as a corticosteroid hormone complex, it's not even whatsoever the whole thing, much like ascorbic acid is not whatsoever vitamin C. And that's what is sold out there. Um, but let's see, to your question, it's like honestly the concept of vitamin, like everybody just assumes we've always known this, and vitamins are compounds found in food. Well, actually, your body makes vitamins in not just one organ, but multiple organs. We're not, like you said, we're not, science is not at all clear on how vitamins even come to be in the body. It doesn't look like we're deficient in vitamins from my research. We are deficient in some minerals. Those are coming from the soil, those are coming through our foods. And basically, I figured out through a lot of research that pharma invented the concept of the vitamin, later called vitamin. It's just a word, it's just an idea based on some observations 100 years ago, and it became an industry. And then it became a billion-dollar industry, and then it became a multi-billion-dollar industry with hundreds of thousands of people benefiting by it. And once that happens, my experience is whatever I'm researching, whether it be supplements or the labs industry, is just gone wild. Like women your age and mine are getting thousands of dollars a year worth of labs, most of which really aren't scientifically tested, most of which are giving you just this little snapshot in time of this one biomarker out of its context with other biomarkers. But supplements, very same thing, very similar thing, is that the pharmaceutical companies mostly have nutraceutical divisions, and it's mostly pharma making the synthetic supplements because I don't have an exact number, but it is well north of 95% of the supplements that people are buying that are entirely synthetic. There was no food involved. There's no herb.
Mm.
Literally a lab-made product, often made in Chinese manufacturing facilities.
Yeah, that was one of the things that really surprised me how much, and already knew because we have a whole food vitamin C. I already knew ascorbic acid was predominantly produced in China, but I didn't realize about B12 and all of these other ones. So I don't know if you have names or you can name names. What are some of the brands that people might be surprised by that are actually maybe nutraceutical under that nutraceutical umbrella of a big pharma company? Are there any that you know about for sure?
So you probably noticed that I don't name
Yeah.
brands in the
Yeah.
book.
That's fair.
Um,
If you'd rather not,
I've
that's
been
okay.
sued. I've
Okay.
been sued for $60 million by a big ag chemical company for criticizing their coating on our fruits and vegetables. And so
Yep.
I will say the ones that we did name like brand names is basically like a matter of public record that they were sued and they lost or they settled 10
Yeah.
and 20 years ago. And they're the big ones. They're the ones that you get at the pharmacy, you get at the Costco, all the big name supplements. They're made by pharma. But another thing that people don't realize is that when you say, "Oh, but I trust mine because my functional medicine practitioner or this influencer that I really think is high integrity is selling it," I'm not at all saying that influencers and functional medicine doctors are bad people. I'm saying it's mostly huge companies putting a private label on a supplement for an influencer, and they get it is super high margin. I know this because I've been in this business for 20 years. I personally have sold supplements. I'm down to two that I'm willing to take and to sell. And like for me, my bar is I don't want any chemistry involved.
Mm.
And I want to know that it's actually addressing an issue and that I've seen a benefit from it, not just a little ping in the first week or two where I see something that I feel, and then I take it for another 10 years, not feeling anything, not seeing the benefits from it. That happens a lot. And people mistake that they feel different in the first few days or the first week with healing. They get those two confused. And I'm not here to tell you whether your supplement is for you or not. As we
Hmm.
discussed, Autumn, you and I have very similar values in that I'm not telling anybody to do something different than what their doctor says. I'm here to help people develop some critical thinking skills
Yeah.
and a willingness to ask questions of the functional medicine world like we do the pharmaceutical world because they're way more married than people think. Allopathic medicine and the old school 1950s chiropractors, naturopaths, whatever, like they have sort of merged,
Mm.
and the allopathic medical doctors are giving prescription strength, quote unquote, vitamin D. I don't like calling it vitamin D because it's not a vitamin and it's not a compound made by your body. It's a compound made by chemistry. So I use quotes when I say vitamin D. I call it cholecalciferol, except that most people don't recognize that.
Yeah.
We can talk about the other industrial uses of cholecalciferol, and what else it's sold as, what else it's a main ingredient of. It's people have a really hard time getting their mind around, and I relate to it because I did too. Why something that has a few molecules in common with something that's been isolated in the body tentatively can be sold as a vitamin.
Yeah.
And when I went to my research with that, I was just like, how do they get away with it? And it said a whole bunch of word salad to me. I went into several large language models, said a whole bunch of word salad to me that if you boil it down is basically like, because nobody's stopped them and because it's a huge mega billion dollar industry.
Mm.
Pulling a mega billion dollar industry out by the roots literally takes like an act of Congress
Yeah.
or just mass awareness that takes 20 years to
Yeah.
spread.
Oh gosh, there's so much in there, and we're gonna go into vitamin D in a second. But you're right, like we have this allopathic side, and then they kind of attack this functional medicine side for their selling of, oh well, look at they're just creating this deficiency, and then they're gonna sell you the cure, which is a pill in a bottle. And I always pride myself on staying in, there's some truth in both, and how do we kind of cut through that and see the problems with both type of systems. So I really think you're brave for doing this because I think this is gonna hurt some feelings. But the truth is, right, when you call those compounds vitamins, they're just different, right? The dose is compressed, right? Oftentimes there's like 1,000% of these nutrients that our body's not used to have. Then we have, there's no cofactors, right? Like in food, there's like these thousands of molecules. Also, there's enzymes that we require to convert maybe these huge amounts. And then we bring in these solvents. And what else is in these
Yes.
pills to make them the right color and to make sure that we can extract them? So there's so many things but to consider. But again, like you're saying, there could be a time when there's a frank deficiency, when you don't have access to high quality food, when you have malabsorption issues. Maybe you're going to have a child and you know that you're deficient. There could be a time and a place where this might work for you, but we're just trying to help you decide, right? Informed, make an informed decision. So take us, cholecalciferol. This is what most people in supplements would refer to as vitamin D. Can you tell us first, paint a broad picture? How are these synthetic compounds derived? And then what's the problem with cholecalciferol?
Yeah, and I would encourage you to investigate what is about to come out of my mouth that you probably won't believe if this is the first time you're hearing it, but it's basically a byproduct of the sheep industry. And most of the supplements, when you dig down to where they came from, they're a byproduct of some industry. It might be one of the food industries, some kind of processing of dairy products, of there are derivatives of human hair, human urine, but the vitamin D is mostly they sometimes will grow algae in a lab for the vegans. But the vast majority of it, like 98% plus of the cholecalciferol, falsely called vitamin D, is actually the sort of fatty, sebaceous gland releasing substance in wrung out of sheep's wool. So it's basically the dirty grease of sheep's wool. And then it goes through in manufacturing plant something like 6 to 8 different processes using different chemicals. So you mentioned solvents. That's one I hit really hard. The doctor in Switzerland who looked at this bag of stuff that came out of my blood and it kind of shimmered like petrochemicals. And I was like, okay, I don't know where I got that exposure. I mean, I have to breathe the air outside, right? And we know that exhaust from cars has cadmium in it. We know that there's silver iodide and some form of aluminum falling out of the sky. There's just jet fuel, even if you whether you believe in the chemtrails thing or not. But we have exposures that just like all of us probably have a fairly similar exposure to. Then there's all the products that we use, and most people are like, if it's green on the label, I trust it, I buy it. And then I look at the ingredients and I'm like, if that's green, it's green washing, not green. Because I don't want the propylene glycol and the sodium lauryl sulfate on my skin because it goes right into my bloodstream. I think it's from the supplements, and the vast majority of they're using a solvent. Water can be a solvent, but usually it's a petrochemical solvent. And they do use a distiller, and that's what all these companies will tell you, oh, we get the solvents out of it. Well, that's why I'm in this lawsuit. That's why I've been sued, is that they want me to um say that their product's non-toxic. And I'm saying, but you in your FDA filing disclosed 7 heavy metals and solvents that go into this coating or edible packaging, as their FDA filing calls it, also film, uh, or fungicide goes on our fruits and vegetables. And I have a problem with that. Like I like to juice vegetables. I would get like 20 times more of your product if your product was on all the fruits and vegetables. So yeah, I spoke up about it. And so that's a whole tangle. And so being non-brand specific, everybody's got their label, but they're all putting it on the same basic product. Almost everybody is using the cholecalciferol that's derived from byproduct of the sheep industry. It's from their wool. So it gives that industry more profit. If you can wring something out of it, sell it, tell the public that it's good for them or that they need it or that it has some similarity to what your body makes in the sunshine. And it does have two chemicals or two molecules that are in common. And then it just becomes sort of this thing that we all buy in on and nobody questions anymore. And I trust my doctor. My doctor told me to take it, and we all did that till we didn't.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And like our company, we do use animal products and we're about whole animal utilization. So I can see why you might want to use a byproduct, right? And not waste anything. But the thing I thought was really interesting was about the mechanism, the fact that it's used in rodenticides and then potentially can leach, minerals and create excess calcium. Can you talk about that? And maybe some anecdotes. You had several anecdotes in the book of people taking vitamin D and their levels going down. And I'll just say for me, I've always had a pause when it comes to supplemental vitamin D. I've only done cod liver oil and the vitamin D lamp and getting outside and, vitamin D rich foods. And my levels have always been really good, like 70s, 60s, 70s range, sometimes 80s. But tell us, what are the mechanisms by which it might be important or to know about? And then also, how are they testing it? You have a whole lot to say on this topic, so go for it.
Yeah, and it's like we're just barely going to be able to scratch the surface here. It's one of the biggest
Yeah.
chapters in the book because it's such a wide-ranging belief that, oh, I have to take it because I'm deficient. I have been told this hundreds of times, if not thousands. in my career, and people believe it. And if their doctor told it to them and it's mathematical because it was based on a lab value, they're testing 25D, which tests for those two molecules. And it's kind of like telling you how much flour you have in a canister on your counter when you actually have wheat in your cold storage down in the basement and you have some refrigerated ground wheat in the fridge. Sorry, I know wheat's like a taboo subject here, and I'm not trying to promote wheat. I'm just saying it's the 25D test is like testing one little place that you have some not even active corticosteroid hormone. It's just not a valuable lab unless you go and do a 125D lab test and your practitioner knows how to do that. It's expensive. They have to freeze it. You have to trust that the lab on the other side thaws it and measures it. So nobody wants to do it. So you do this silly 25D test and they get a biomarker that's really quite irrelevant. But like you, I've always been in the optimal range, except so I've tested it. Now I just do it for like the interest of it. The one thing that's valid about 25D is it is correlated to optimal range, which you have always been in and I've always been in, except I'm going to tell you the 1 year I wasn't, is correlated to better health outcomes. You tend to be looking at a healthier person if they're in that optimal range. And when you see people with low 25D lab values, they tend to be people with major health problems. So the one time, so I don't have a doctor. I've never had a primary care physician. The last doctor I went to, except when I was in a four-wheeler accident, was the one who pulled my youngest child out of my body 25 years ago. But I I did go to a hormone practitioner, a nurse practitioner every year. I'm kind of like even rethinking that. But I have for I don't know, over 20 years gone to a nurse practitioner, gotten labs. Every year the labs get more. Last year I went to LabCorp and they said that they were pulling $2,300 worth of labs. And I just laughed and said, no, you're not. I have no complaints. I literally just get my thyroid from this nurse practitioner. Nope, nope to the $2,300 worth of labs. So, um, anyway, what we're talking about with cholecalciferol. So I went to my nurse practitioner 1 year and I sort of knew the drill by then. I had done deep research on, no, I don't think I'd done deep research yet on fish oil and on vitamin D. So I knew a little bit. But we didn't have the tools that we do now, where I can just keep asking more and more questions and going deeper and deeper and find out what country makes what percentage of it. What is that? What are those manufacturing facilities doing exactly? Lay out all the chemical processing steps. Like these are things you guys can go ask. Like most of you have Grok or you have Gemini with your Google account, or you have maybe you're signed up for Chat GPT, but you can literally go and say, what are the base materials of this supplement? You can ask, what are the chemical processes used in manufacturing whatever the supplement is. And so I was doing a lot of that. And, eventually AI is going to gatekeep and they're going to keep us out of the search. But that's why I had Mike, who shared one of the vitamin D stories. He had never taken supplements. He was aware of that there was an industry, but he's in the UK. He was very loud and proud like I was, and his career took a hit like mine did in 2020 to 2021 when we spoke up for medical freedom. And so I was in a community with him and a lot of the doctors and lawyers and public figures who were speaking up and taking the body blows during the big medical freedom war. So I hired him to be a co-author of this book, partly because he didn't have any biases. And he was a great researcher. He'd written 4 books of his own. He was a co-author on a bunch of things. And so he tells a vitamin D story that I'll get to in a second. But I went to my practitioner and I kind of already had a big hairy eyeball on fish oil, kind of knew that it had been in the supply chain for years by the time you take it. I had gone to Expo West and there's a whole aisle of these Chinese companies, and I like asked someone who looked like they might speak English, like what is this whole aisle? And they said we sell the chemicals to the fish oil industry that deodorize and purify so that people don't taste the rotten fish burp. And like literally a whole aisle at the biggest health and wellness conference. And so things like that were like awakening me one step at a time. So I kind of knew about fish oil and I kind of knew about like I'd already had doubts, like you said, you always did about like, how does this taking this pill do what my body makes in the sunshine? Kind of think I just need the sunshine. So I'd never taken vitamin D. I didn't really trust it. And I went to my practitioner and she said, she had just told me that my vitamin D levels were optimal. Like I'm told every year. They tell me that in Switzerland too. And then she wanted to sell me fish oil and vitamin D on my way out. And I don't know, maybe I was just not my usual critical thinking self, or maybe I was feeling rich that day. I don't know. But I said to her, you just told me that my vitamin D levels were optimal. And she said, wait for it. Well, couldn't hurt. So I
Oh,
leave with vitamin D and fish oil and like instead of having getting an $89 office visit from me, now she has residual income every single month with this shipping products. And so I took the vitamin D not super religiously, but like the next year I went back and lo and behold, my one and only I fell below the optimal range. And it was the year that I had taken the cholecalciferol, falsely called vitamin D. So that was really an eye opener. That was just one of the points along the way. I've mentioned several of them. While Mike was researching vitamin D with me, and we wrote the book because we're like, we know how Google filtered everybody in alternative health out of the search results back in like 2017, 2018. We all watched it happen. It happened to all of us. We lost 80 to 90% of the organic traffic that used to search and our content would come up and they just literally filtered us out. So all you're getting is the medically sponsored, Healthline, med, whatever it is. Medtronic's coming to my mind, but that's not it. Um, the big, huge pharma sponsored pro allopathic medicine giving you the party line. So it's going to happen with AI too. And we are going to get a version of events and we are going to be propagandized. And so I wanted to do this book while we could still get at this information before they started gatekeeping. And Mike had a friend whose daughter was a teenager and she was some kind of athlete and she just crashed, like her health had crashed. And he said, and here he is, so new to even learning about supplements. He said to his friend, the mom, have you been to like a functional medicine practitioner? Because this is a mom who like questioned some of COVID narratives. She was like not super mainstream, and he knew he could ask that question. And she said, "Yeah, we're going to this and that doctor." And he said, do they have her on vitamin D?" And she said, "Yeah." And she just is like, she just keeps getting worse. And he said, "So what did they do with her vitamin D?" And she said, "They increased the dose. So now she's on a super high dose of vitamin D." And he goes, "Well, I'd love for you to read our chapter of the book." And she read it and she stopped the vitamin D and her daughter got better. So
so
I
interesting.
mean, obviously I'm taking a
Yeah.
story that has some complexity and I'm telling it to you in the shortest version possible. But here's Mike, who's just a great researcher and a great author, but is literally just discovering this for himself. Like I didn't bias him. I said, go research this. Here's some ideas for how to research. You can ask an AI tool to scan PubMed for you. And
Yeah.
it's not that they're not gatekeeping because as we researched, we found it gatekeeping where we had to ask 8 or 10 queries of a few different large language models to even get at the truth. So I think there'll come a point where someone will read this book in 5 or 10 years, and then they'll go try to fact check it in AI and tell me that I'm a liar. Right
Yeah.
now, you'll be able to confirm what I'm saying.
Yeah, interesting. And I highly encourage everyone to do that. That's what we're trying to say here is just like peel back the layers, look behind the curtain. And if you had to guess, like, and those are interesting anecdotes, and I know there been research where this kind of vitamin D supplementation has been helpful. And I know when it comes to like beta carotene, vitamin E, certain B vitamins, there's actual research showing in certain populations they can be harmful. Have you seen that with vitamin D research? Has it not only not been helpful, but are there negative health repercussions in clinical trials or trials?
Yes, the preponderance of the evidence looks positive, and that's what some colleagues have said to me who get mad because they make money as affiliates selling cholecalciferol, and they just won't research it. And one of them I think so highly of, and he was just like, my audience keeps coming to me and saying, Green Smoothie Girl is talking about vitamin D and you sell it. And so who's right here? And he just, the last thing I told him about it, and then we went back to our friendship, not discussing cholecalciferol, is When you research this, you're going to come to the same conclusion as me. You just haven't chosen to do the research yet. So I'm here for you when you do. Like one of my blog posts on it before I even wrote the book, the citations were for meta studies. Meta studies look at hundreds of studies and tell you what the consensus is of looking at 150 studies or 500 studies. If you have a PhD, you're well aware of this, but average person doesn't necessarily know how much more interesting a meta study is. And my one of my blog posts, the four meta studies, proved that vitamin D, false name for cholecalciferol, has done nothing for bone health. That's what they originally sold it to us for. They put it in our milk in the 1980s and told us it was for bone health. Well, that has fallen apart looking at hundreds and hundreds of studies with no positive impact on bone fractures,
Mm.
as proven all over the world. So now they've just kind of like quit making that claim, although my dad's oncologist is putting him on vitamin D because the chemo and radiation impact his bone density.
Yeah.
So, most of medicine is still just mindlessly handing out the cholecalciferol, even though it's been completely debunked that it protects bones. So they moved on to make a different claim about it. And now there's just this vague claim that you just say it in a vague way and people pick up what you're putting down, even though you're careful not to violate FDA rules that it supports immune function. And so
Mm.
everybody was pounding the vitamin D during COVID. And the problem is how the studies are done. The studies will look at your vitamin D levels. And like I said, there is a correlation, but like you and I'm 59. You're younger than me, but why are
43.
my vitamin D levels always high optimal? I don't even think that that biomarker is particularly interesting or useful, but it does correlate to better outcomes, and people do have very little of it who are unwell. Doesn't mean that it's a cause. It means it's correlated. Big
Right.
difference. That's
Yeah.
a whole subject. But the public is so bought in on it, and just next time y'all are told you're deficient in something, take a look at the labs. You have research tools available to you. I did a whole chapter on the vitamin A and beta carotene. That's the one where there's actual danger. But let me just say this about, are there studies that prove that vitamin D is harmful? Let me say this that'll punctuate that and let people think about it themselves. It is the not just used in rat poison, as you said, it's the thing that kills the rats. It's the base material. Now,
Mm.
some rat poisons are moving away from it because more and more people are becoming aware of this. They're like, wait, cholecalciferol. Cholecalciferol is killing the rats? Yes, it is.
How is it
It is
doing that?
this it makes the body flood all its calcium out into the blood. So it causes hypercalcemia and the rat will die in about a week. It's not like it eats it and kills over dead. And so with us, we're bigger. And, that's what my colleague's argument is. Well, in small doses, it's good for you. And I'm like, is it? Or is it doing the damage more slowly? There's a huge Facebook group of people who are awake to this and they're going on there to talk about the damage to their health
Mm.
of being robbed of minerals by taking cholecalciferol. So if cholecalciferol is the active ingredient in most rat poisons, although they're moving away from it and using a blood thinner now, they're using basically what was patented as warfarin
Oh.
instead, which will also kill a rat. Anyways, it has on it instructions for what if your pet accidentally eats the rat poison, how to get poison control engaged.
Mm.
So guess what the number one buyer of cholecalciferol is? This is so sad
I
based
don't.
on what I just told you. Pet
Pet
food
food.
companies.
Oh.
And I
Why?
only know this from AI research. Like it's most of it's made in China and most of it is bought by pet food companies. And I don't actually know why.
Yeah.
My guess is that when you say fortified, nutrient fortified on the bag, that you can get an extra 50 cents out of people. And when you're selling 10,000 bags of dog food a day, nationwide or worldwide, that's a lot of revenue.
So you don't buy into the dose makes the poison because you hear that all the time as an argument for, okay, these petrochemical derived food additives, or as you're going to say, solvents, they might be safe in small doses like water. than not in large doses. But you're saying when it comes to cholecalciferol and its effect on mineral metabolism and release into the bloodstream, would you still say even a small amount could be deleterious?
I would, because nobody's proven that this compound, this cholecalciferol compound, is actually achieving any benefits in the body. They're
Mm,
just taking higher ranges of what is measured in 25D lab tests and comparing it to good health outcomes. And the vast majority of people, including doctors, just accept that at face value. They don't ask, but are these people all taking the pills? And I can't find any evidence that by taking the pills, you achieve the health benefits. Can't find any. And I
yeah.
can find the four meta studies. One of them was for bone fractures, two of them were for cancer. And this
Mm,
colleague of mine is in cancer, and he's been promoting it for years and years and years. Like, cancer patients need to take vitamin D. It would be terrible for his career. It would be catastrophic for him to say, hey, all y'all who've been through cancer treatment and been through one of the worst things that life has to dish out, and you've looked to me as your guru, I was wrong. Cholecalciferol is toxic. It'll kill your pet if your pet eats it in as rat poison. If you put little enough into the dog food, it's not going to kill your dog fast, but look at the health of our dogs and cats.
yeah.
They're all at over half of them getting cancer, just like humans are. And so it's a toxic exposure that, is certainly not our only toxic exposure. But I don't know about you, but I feel like I live in a toxic world and I have to work and research
Yeah.
to to not feel like I'm the mole in the game of whack-a-mole.
Totally. And I just love that. I think this is such an important point that people with low levels of vitamin D might have inflammation. Something else is causing these low levels of vitamin D. And people with high levels of vitamin D might live a very healthy lifestyle, get enough sun exposure, eating vitamin D rich foods, you know. But that, like you said, it's not because they're taking vitamin D supplements necessarily. And comparing those two people doesn't give you all the information. I love what you said there. And I think thinking critically and making a risk assessment, cost benefit analysis, like obviously we can't always be protected from everything, right? And there will be some times when we have to say, okay, the benefits outweigh the risks. Fair, but knowing is the first step in being able to make that kind of assessment. So I love that. Now, vitamin D, aside from that, there's other vitamins that have been shown to be harmful. What do you think are the ones that most people should be aware of? And what research surprised you?
The big shocker was the vitamin A and beta carotene data. And so we devoted a chapter to that because,
Mhm.
there's quite a bit of money that went to a big research, a big longitudinal study. And their goal was to find the benefits of vitamin A and beta carotene to sell the supplements. And I think most of the time studies like this get buried, but this one managed to get out there so that we could, like, find it and dig into it. And the scientists were legitimate enough scientists that they didn't just bury it and tell whoever paid for it, sorry, we can't, that would even be high integrity to say, sorry, we can't say anything good about your product here. It literally had a double digit, I think even over 30% higher all-cause mortality for long-term vitamin A takers. Like, the results of people taking synthetic beta carotene and synthetic vitamin A, which is called retinol palmitate. Okay, when you see words like that, retinol palmitate or palmitic acid or cholecalciferol, and you're like, wow, that's just the name for it that science calls it. No, if it seems like it's a chemical name, it's because it is.
Mhm.
And so now they've called the vitamin in our body that name just because they call it that.
Yeah.
Somebody decided to call it that, and now everybody thinks that palmitic acid is the vitamin B6, or pyridoxine is the
Mhm.
vitamin B6 in our body. No, it's not. It's the pill. And then they put it on the label and they'll say pyridoxine, and in parentheses, vitamin B6. Vitamin B6 compound, there's no food in there.
Mm.
Those are made with petrochemicals, tar, heavy metals are involved. You mentioned vitamin
Cobalt.
B12.
Yeah.
Yep. Vitamin B12, there's a few different ways they make it, but cyanocobalamin. What does that sound like, y'all?
Cyanide.
Cyano. Cyanide is one of the base materials. And cyanocobal, I mean, you just
Cobalt.
said it, cobalt. Okay, so I don't think that there's a medicinal dose of cyanide or cobalt. Now, an apple seed has a little tiny bit of
Cyanide.
natural cyanide in it, but again, they're not molecularly the same. And like you said, when we make the synthetic cyanide that killed Socrates, I think it was cyanide or what's the other one, but that it comes with a bunch of chemicals that were used in the manufacture that aren't in the apple seeds. My dad always ate the whole apple, and I remember when I was in my 20s, I was like, I think there's some some little tiny trace of natural, maybe it's arsenic
I
in the
think,
apple seed. He was fine. My dad's well, he's not really very fine right now at 82, but like my point is these compounds are different. If they're manufactured in a lab, they come with all the things that preserve them to stay in the supply chain for years. Literally, there's raw materials that end up in some kind of blend, and it gets to start all over again with its expiration date once the raw material goes into the. So, literally, a lot of the things that we take are 2 and 4 years old by the time we take them. So even when we find them made of food, people are like, well, what about this one brand? And I know a brand, I'm not affiliated with them, but they do seem to make their supplements out of food. And people ask me, well, should I buy that? I'm like, I mean, if you're still in the mode of I need a pill for everything, and that is a very hard, long, slow, mental model that breaks down for you the more you learn, thus the need to read the book. Yeah, I know you're going to put a link down there where there's some videos that Mike, my co-author, and I did
yeah.
about some of the things that we learned and like 6 supplements we would never take and why. But yeah, that was probably the most shocking one is vitamin A and beta carotene is all kinds of things. They were looking at smokers. They thought they were going to find that by taking vitamin A that smokers would do better. Nope, they did much worse. They died at higher rates. Their uh, lung cancer worse. It was a dreadful outcome. And for once, instead of that data just getting shelved, it's in the public domain where you can go fact check us on these things.
Yeah, and I've actually been talking about this for a long time. For beta carotene, there's evidence that calcium supplementation can be problematic, right? We don't want calcium building up in the arteries, and if you don't have adequate, vitamin D and vitamin K and magnesium and all of these other nutrients and minerals, that can be very problematic. And the B vitamins, like you said, B9, folate and folic acid, different. High levels of folic acid can mask B12 deficiency. Vitamin C, that's another really interesting one. Ascorbic acid is that antioxidant outer shell. And I've always been really careful about this because I've read research where that might be helpful. But there's also research on the other side, at least one study that said maybe there's genetic issues that can come from, especially when it interacts with iron. But there's also other research showing that vitamin C in whole food forms is just different. Like one study where they looked at drinking, I think it was a camu juice, and it reduced inflammation and oxidative stress, whereas taking an equivalent dose of ascorbic acid, it didn't do that. So yeah, this
Yeah.
research is out
Camu
there.
camu juice is totally different than ascorbic acid.
That's exactly right. Because there's, again, so many different compounds working together in ways that we can't necessarily recreate. Two last ones that I thought were really interesting, fish oil. So I am a huge believer in omega-3s. I think so many of us are deficient. I think they're so incredibly important for health. I think the balance of omega-6 to omega-3 is something I talk about a lot. But you cannot refute the fact that many studies show recently that they aren't as helpful as we'd like them to be. It could be because we're not looking at the status or the omega balance in the cells, but it could also very well be that the quality of the supplements we're taking unregulated. And so can you tell us what you found to be the problems with fish oil supplements?
Yeah, so it's just fish oil that I've researched for, I don't know, at least 10 years. I've published multiple blog posts on it. I always have references to the meta studies that I cite. One of them is, I don't remember the number, but I know it's north of 1,000 studies. So it reviewed over 1,000 studies. And bottom line is 35, 40 years of our doctors prescribing us what turns out to be rancid fish oil has done nothing for cardiovascular health. And that's the premise that they sold it to us. So one thing I always ask people is, would you like, let's say you're going to have a salmon fillet for dinner and you want to barbecue it. So you get it out of the freezer this morning. and you put it on the counter so it can thaw because you're a smart shopper and you buy it when you get really good quality and stick it in your freezer. Okay, if you like didn't get around to it tonight, maybe you and your husband went to play pickleball and you just came back and you're like, "Oh, we never got around to making the salmon." Just leave it there and in a couple years, grill it. Leave it there for 2 years. Would you go grill it and eat it?
No,
You wouldn't, right?
no,
Why not?
because it's old fish. And well, I mean, Norwegians love the old aged fish, but I mean, it goes rancid. The fatty acids are very vulnerable and they can go rancid.
Right. And that's what you're eating. And not occasionally, but all of the fish oils that you buy in the little capsules, they have been there's dye in there so that they look a very consistent color of yellow. There's deodorizers so that you can't taste the fish oil burp. Anyways, they were very frank with me because they just assumed I was an industry insider when I was actually a horrified consumer at Expo West. I don't know, this is probably like 12, 14 years ago. I was just like asking questions, this is like what I had at the time. There was no AI to go survey all the literature on PubMed, but it's actual huge meta studies that show that and the medical profession hasn't gotten the memo. Like you guys should test your practitioner. I'm not telling anybody to not go to your practitioner, that your practitioner is a bad person. There's a lot that they have to keep on top of. And they have to run a business and they have to be present for patients and they've got 10 minutes to see you. They don't necessarily know all the research on every product that they sell. And they're less likely to go research the data on the products that they sell and benefit by. And I hate to tell you this, but it's pretty much all functional medicine doctors who sell the processed, highly preserved, rancid fish oils.
Yeah.
But the evidence is not good for the fish oil pills. Now, in terms of like the refrigerated bottles of, I don't know. That's not a rabbit hole that I've gone down.
Yeah.
And I'm a fan of Whole Foods, and I know you are too. So
Absolutely. And that's what they've tested where they go in and test the level of oxidation of just common fish oil supplements on the market. And the results are not impressive. A lot of them are definitely oxidized and the quality is all over the map. And yeah, I always opt for like a cod liver oil. We sell like a fish roe product. I really believe, again, that's a whole food, right? That's not an extracted that came from like farmed fish or fish waste or whatever, you know what I mean? So I think it's just really important to be mindful. And the last one that I really liked, because this is one that you've supplemented with, is collagen. So can you talk about collagen? And we do have a bone broth. I'm a big believer in bone broth, but collagen is different than bone broth. Can you explain that and what you've learned about the collagen industry?
yeah, we have a bone broth too. And I don't even eat animals except in a few cases. And bone broth is one where I think the benefits are really clear. And I don't have any criticism of anybody who does eat animals. I
Yeah,
just myself, yeah, I mean, you're lovely. You have beautiful, glowing skin. Like I see
so
the
do
people
you.
who eat a lot of meat and look amazing.
Thank you.
Um,
So do
and
you.
I've just come to the point where I'm like, I think you can eat meat, you could be a vegan, you could be paleo, if you're eating whole foods, like stop eating the processed food. You and I overlap there. That's our Venn diagram. Okay.
Totally.
I don't want to eat beef and chicken and whatever, but I make my own bone broth because a lot of people are making it that's not very clean. Um, but the collagen is basically souped up jello that they make in a like a starburst shit and like add some sugar to it and you have more collagen in your body than anything else. Like it's the most common protein in your body. And so eating the amount that's super processed and preserved that's in a chew or a pill, it's kind of a joke when you consider how much of it you have in your body and the fact that you have to break it down to its constituent parts. Your body still has, it doesn't like, it's not like if you eat some animal collagen, and that is what it is. It is literally the ground up tendons, skin, ligaments of some byproduct of an animal processing industry. And it's so magical for the people who sell it because it's so high margin, because it's throwaway parts of the animal. And so it's not like that collagen just goes to your joints. No,
Mhm.
it breaks down in the stomach just like everything does into elements. And then your body does have to replenish your joints and tissues with collagen itself, which are built out of the whole complex compound that is vitamin C, out of zinc, out of a bunch of different raw materials. So it's sad that we have been so gullible and I'm not saying this to criticize anyone listening because I bought it till I didn't. I bought it till I did the research. And I know everybody's not going to spend hundreds and hundreds of hours researching this. Thus, I wrote the book. I didn't even go to my publisher. Didn't even go to my publisher. I was like gonna self-publish it, which I've self-published some of my books and gone with major publishers for others. And I was like, they will not publish this because it's not, people are like, oh, the drug industry is going to be so mad at you. Well, or they're going to love you. And I'm like, but the drug industry and the supplement industry really are in bed together. And so that's one of the things that I wanted to help people understand
Yeah.
is that they really are, they're like kissing cousins or they're two hallways of the same building.
Yeah.
They're under the same roof in many cases with the pharmaceutical companies. Not all the pharmaceutical companies have a nutraceutical division, but there's insiders who have said I was working at them in the 90s and we sat in big meetings and where they said to us, we have more profit potential in supplements starting about the year 2000 than we do drugs. Drugs are getting a bad rap. What can we make in the whole peptides industry? It's and immunotherapy for cancer. Like people always asking me about it. Well, those are some really nice sounding names that deflect from the fact that they're drugs.
Yeah.
I mean, they could be supplements too, but the line is getting very blurry, is my main point.
Yeah, no, and I love what you're saying that they're related and collagen, yeah, like you said, hooves and hides, and this is where most collagen comes from. Now, bone
Hello.
broth is different and probably something you are using because it's made from bones. Ours is bones and water, and
Yeah.
that contains minerals. That's a whole food.
Yeah.
It's not
Right.
like a highly extracted peptide, like you said. And you guys go read your book because there's a whole chapter on peptides. There's a whole chapter on hormones and supplements like creatine and N-acetylcysteine and all of these other things. And I will say, I just had a podcast with a glycine researcher, and what I think about is like on a daily basis, whole foods, right? If you're trying to prevent and stay in balance, whole foods. Now, is there a time when isolated supplementation could help? My interview with Dr. Brind was populated by so many people who have been helped. And I think maybe
Yeah.
if you're out of balance, adding something to bring you back into balance, hey, that's a thing. Like glycine seems to be able to shut down inflammation. A lot of us are deficient. So yeah, it's a nuanced topic, but I love
Mhm.
that you are asking people to ask the questions, the bigger questions, and just connecting the dots for them behind the scenes. So to close up here, I'd love for you to tell us two things. What do you use, if you do? Um, and are you just eating a very nutrient dense diet? And then also, what are questions we can begin asking every time we look at that supplemental bottle? What is kind of a checklist that we could have?
So I do take humic and fulvic acids. I do believe from going to Switzerland for 15 years and seeing everybody's lab results that I take with me. I have each week I have like 30 different people with me and we just sit together at lunch and dinner and breakfast and we look at each other's labs and I've noticed that literally everybody is deficient in some minerals. And when I was first told that I was deficient in zinc, I would go take zinc, and the next year I was exactly the same, like still deficient in zinc. So I sort of was yet another data point along the way that I was like, oh, this isolated zinc product that I buy from Pure or whatever, Pure Formulations, like it's not working, apparently. It's not being absorbed. So, but I like humic and fulvic acids that come from ancient plant deposits because that's where our plants go down in the soil. Their roots go down, they're looking for minerals. Farmers used to till the soil and leave it fallow and let the compost regenerate the soil. We don't do that anymore. We use synthetic nitrogen fertilizer. So our plants are coming up short. Our animals are being fed, if they're lucky, like I guess grass fed. I'm not really in that world so much, but like most of the meat products most people are eating were fed grain or like gummy worms, or you've probably seen the crazy stories where they interview a farmer and he's like, well, some company gave me all their leftover aged out gummy worms and I just feed them to my cows. Why does he care? As long as they get fatter and he could sell them. So,
Yep.
our animal products still have the residuals of the food they ate. So, just by eating animal products doesn't necessarily opt you out of the pesticides, herbicides, vaccines, steroids, like all those things still apply. So, your sourcing matters. I love to support local farmers. Unfortunately, here in Florida, like I can't find anybody who's growing organically anywhere near me. Um, so I tried to eat whole foods. I tried to buy organic. Organic isn't perfect. Okay, they could put copper pesticide on your organic. So you don't get the glyphosate, but you get the copper and way more copper than your body wants, but they can call it natural. So it got through onto organic produce. So that's what I do, like eating whole foods, same thing that you teach. There are good companies like yours selling food that's as close to natural as possible. I mean, there's like a little bit of processing if you're going to have it in a jar or it's going to be in a product like my bone broth, your bone broth, like there's minimal processing there, but
Yep.
it's a whole food. And it's so much better than eating a Starburst made with, it's like chewy candy jello that literally cost them 4 cents and you paid $2 for the chew or whatever.
Oh my gosh. And when it comes to those, so many of those like gummy products, they test them and there's just not what people think there is. The amounts are way below, or there's extra things, or maybe it's different things that they didn't even have to label. And also, a lot of these products are made by marketers with their slick sales pages that just like really see a market and know how to speak to that market and don't really have an investment in what the product actually does. So I think that's so important. And like you said, using AI, you said there's like an MFDS, or what was this document you talked about in your book that we can kind of
Yeah.
search up too?
So what I recommend you do is go in AI and ask it things like, what is the base material of, I'm looking right here at, I mean, I have like supplements that I keep just because it's painful to throw away a $50 bottle of supplements that I bought and now I don't want to take it because now I know what it is. But like go in there and say, what is the base material of N-acetylcysteine? That's what I'm holding here in my hand. And when they were floating a story out there like 6 years ago about that Amazon was going to get rid of it, I bought 10 of them. I have 10 of these, and it's a colleague I know who private labels these. And I went to this colleague when I did the research and I said, did you know that that's made out of like Chinese human hair or duck feathers? And he's like, who cares if it works? So that's the thing is like the owner of the company that you think is making the product, usually they're not. If it's, there's like 10,000 other people who are putting their label on it. I'm not trying to take down the supplement industry. I'm not trying to take people's story away from them that I took this thing and it helped them. I'm not going to argue with you about that. If you feel like something helped you, that's great. I want you to know how you can research it. Go into a large language model and ask what are the base materials that they start with to make this supplement. Ask them what chemical processes are used in manufacturing N-acetylcysteine, for instance. Okay, I told you that's one of those chemical sounding names, right? I can guarantee you it's going to be synthetic when it has a name like N-acetylcysteine. So go in there and ask what the chemical processes are, and you will be given in great detail all the solvent baths that it goes through, all the strong acids or bases or deodorizers, purifiers. These are all chemicals. Yes, they will distill it. They will try to get it out. There's a little bit left. I'm worried about the cumulative effect. That's what I saw in the bag of solvents that came out of my body. And that was the shocker for me that made me go, okay, everybody thinks this is a boring subject, but they want to know if they're spending hundreds of dollars a month. I've talked to women who are spending $1,600 a month on supplements.
Wow, wow. And you're
You
not,
should know.
yeah, you should know. And we're not saying that this chemical or this compound is not identical to the one found in food. We're saying that the delivery system, the way it's given to your body, and the potential additives, those are maybe the problems, maybe the bigger issues. But thank you, Robyn. This has been so incredibly enlightening. Now tell people, where can they connect with you? What kind of goodies can we get? I'm going to put a link like down in the show notes for this book. I've read it. I think it's really wonderful. And I think what you're doing in a balanced way, saying, let's just be educated about this, right?
Yeah.
Let's just question. Let's just really take a nuanced approach. I love it. So thank you. And tell us where we can connect with you and get all your goodies.
Thank you for asking. So I'm Green Smoothie Girl online and Robyn Openshaw on Facebook. I'm battling for people's health freedom, medical freedom. I think I'm going to Tallahassee to speak up about a bill in front of Florida's legislature next week that
Nice.
bans Florida citizens from speaking up about chemicals on our food from Big Ag. It's a Big Ag throw it into a bill. I have been deep in activism since 2020, and so some people didn't like that. Some people just wanted me to teach them green smoothie recipes, and so
Mm.
Green Smoothie Girl for almost 20 years now online, and uh, yeah, Robyn Openshaw, if you want to follow me personally, you might get some spicy takes on some other things, though. I kind of talk about whatever I want on my own channel.
And you know what? I appreciate that about you. And like you said, our dietary philosophies differ, but there's so much about what we believe in that is the same, right? We are so much more alike than we are different. And ultimately, I think when we just take a pot, like I was the person who wanted to take a pill rather than eat when I was
Me
young.
too.
Now I realized there is no workaround. And this mineral deficiency we're suffering from, this is a direct result of the practices that we've chosen to prioritize in our agricultural system. Those minerals, our plants can't get to the minerals because the life in the soil is depleted. And so we need to start looking at the bigger picture too. Regenerative ag, where's our food coming from? How do we restore that environmental health? That is the fix, right? And
Yep.
sometimes supplements can help along the way, but ultimately I think that's what we're both kind of advocating for here. Yes.
Yeah, there's no skipping the whole food diet. If supplements help you too, that's great, but it has to be an adjunct. And just to go out on a laugh, didn't quite finish the story of my taking the big cup of supplements every day and having them in my tight 1980s jeans and put them in the desk. And sixth period, the cops came in and said, "Is there a Robyn Openshaw here?" Had to go to the office. And when I saw that pile of pills that they were there to question me about because they thought I was using drugs, I broke out in a white hot panic, not because I thought the cops were going to take me to jail, but because I thought they were going to tell my mom that I didn't take the pills. So,
Hilarious. That's, I'm sure, how my little boy feels. But he's taking like whole food vitamin C pills, but he does. He takes a lot of those whole food vitamin extracts. But that is genius. Thank you again, Robyn. I really appreciate your work. Go check out her book, and you can find the link below. So thanks, everyone.
thank you, Autumn. Bye, everyone.
Awesome. Oh, bye.